Good afternoon to you all. It's not easy for me to follow up after such a splendid talk of Helga. And Helga, just for your reassurance, I am using notes too. My talk will be on the relation between technology and ethics, and specifically on the type of technology that is meant to alleviate care burden and improve quality of life and autonomy in dementia care. Now, we all know that the graying of our population poses major challenges because of the related increase of the number of people with dementia and because of the concurrently decreasing number of potential carers. And it is predicted that these trends will ultimately result in a so-called care vacuum, thus increasing the pressures on an already overburdened care system. Now, of course, this is nothing new for you. But I would like to call your attention to the often alarmistic and frequently stigmatizing phrasing of this message. For example, when the expected increase in the number of people with dementia is referred to as a ticking time bomb, undermining the sustainability of our society, or as a tsunami that will flood our society and that will result in a tremendous increase in the costs of care. I will come back to these stigmatizing metaphors at the end of my talk. But for now, I only want to underscore that in view of the care vacuum, much is expected from technology to answer at least part of the demographic challenge. And indeed, care-directed technology is booming business today. Industries engage in this new market, and policymakers and funding agencies, both on a national and European level, are very active in engaging this type of research and this type of technology development. And they promote collaboration between academic researchers, health professionals, and designers of technology. Now, technology can offer support to people with dementia and their carers in multiple ways, but in general and from a normative point of view, a distinction can be made between two types of application, namely assistive technologies, which offer assistance and support that allow people to perform tasks which they would otherwise be unable to do, and on the other hand, surveillance technologies, which aim to safeguard and protect and can serve as an alternative to restraints. In short, one could say assistive technology enables, while surveillance technology controls. In reality, however, both goals are not mutually exclusive. In fact, assistive technology always has an element of surveillance, and surveillance technology also enables people, for example, by allowing them to move more freely around. But notwithstanding this continuity and overlap, the extremes on this continuum are not morally equivalent, as is evidenced by the fact that several countries have issued legislation or guidelines according to which electronic surveillance is considered a restraint. Examples, for instance, are the Netherlands, Scotland, but Austria as well, as you can read on this slide. There is a lot of debate on the pertinence of the distinction between assistive technology and surveillance technology. And those who advocate a wider implication of technology strongly dislike the term surveillance and prefer to label all care-directed technology as assistive technology. Because, as they say, we do it all to strengthen and promote autonomy and quality of life of people with dementia in order to help them retain their independence. Nonetheless, at the heart of this distinction are two different meanings of autonomy. Autonomy as a defensive concept of non-interference, and autonomy in another meaning, namely autonomy as the wish to live according to self-chosen standards. When we say that technology surveils, accent is laid on the first concept of autonomy. When we say that technology enables and assists, the focus is more on the second meaning of autonomy. Now, from the very start, the use of technology, both assistive technology and surveillance technology in dementia care, has led to considerable debate between health professionals, researchers, ethicists, and even legal scholars. In part, this has to do with the specific vulnerability of people with dementia, which entitles them to extra protection. And for that reason, and because of the lacking ethical consensus, Alzheimer Europe has issued a report on the ethical issues related to the use of technology in dementia care. This report also contains a guideline and a position statement, as well as a framework for decision-making in individual applications. In fact, I have nothing to add to this well-written report. It is very complete. It addresses all the practical issues. So instead of summarizing this report, I would like to call your attention for another type of question. And this question is, are we really asking the right questions by writing these types of reports? And further, are the answers to these questions ethically sound? And finally, what is the proper role of ethics with regard to technology? In order to address these questions, I will try, first of all, to get a bit closer to the essence of the debate, and so to take us one step further than the distinction between assistive technology and surveillance technology. But these alternative questions ultimately have to do with the way we conceive of technology and our relation to technology and our ethical guidance with regard to technology. My analysis is based on two systematic reviews on the literature of assistive technology and surveillance technology, the ethical aspects of this literature in dementia care performed by our research group. And these reviews demonstrate without doubt that the ethical debate on the use of technology in dementia care traces back to the application of tagging and tracking devices in order to control wandering behavior of people with dementia. What happened here was that a technology that was originally designed to study animal behavior was transferred and translated to a new domain of application, namely the care for spatially disoriented people with dementia. As you can imagine, this form of wandering technology sparked off considerable ethical debate. It was said that tagging people with dementia was stigmatizing, that it removed personhood, and that it violated human rights of privacy and dignity. Tagging should be reserved to criminals, others said. But protagonists of this technology contended that it could also lead to a more secure environment and a decrease in caregiver burden. And furthermore, if people with dementia were given a choice between physical restraints and tagging, they would surely prefer to be tagged. This latter argument, however, is ethically questionable because the proposed choice can hardly be seen as free and uncoerced. The result may be that people adapt their preferences to what they can get instead of sticking to what they really want. There is one slide missing, but I can continue. Okay, another element of the debate is that there were cultural differences with regard to the ethical arguments. In the United Kingdom, for instance, the focus was much on what technology did to personhood. In the Netherlands, the focus was very much on what the needs of persons with dementia are. And in the United States, technology was almost mechanically accepted, but the debate was more on costs and liability. Also, the patient perspective was scarcely sought in the literature on the ethical aspects of technology. And when the patient perspective was involved, it was not conclusive because patients were conflicting in their own valuing. Now, on balance, this debate shows that there is lots of ambiguity and ambivalence. There is no ethical consensus with regard to the use of technology, and instead technology creates normative uncertainty, exemplified by the loss of guidance of basic ethical principles. And the standard ethical answer to this normative uncertainty has been, and that can be found in all ethical guidelines, that we have to focus in the use of technology on an individual approach, tailored to the person with dementia, that we have to conduct scrupulous informed consent, not as an event, but as an ongoing process. This is also in Alzheimer Europe's guideline. But it brings me back to my tripled question. Are we asking the right questions? Are the answers to our questions ethically sound? And what is the role of ethics with regard to technology? These questions regard the validity and sufficiency of informed consent and our conception of technology. As we all know, ever since the 1970s, the central focus of bioethics is on autonomy and informed consent. This focus is a result of the movement for patient rights and the criticism of medical paternalism, but this turn in ethics was also a reaction to the unlimited application of medical technology without allowing the patient a right to say no. The informed consent doctrine presupposes that ethical questions are merely and essentially a question of choice. Choices may be difficult, but they still are a matter of choice. And thus we also presuppose that technology is an instrument, a means to serve an aim that in itself is morally neutral, while the role of ethics is to decide on good applications of technology. My contention is that this conception of the relation between ethics and technology rests on a misconception of technology. And this can be illustrated by a simple example not taken from medicine or healthcare, namely the development of telecommunication. Originally, the telephone was designed for business-like conversation as a further development of the telegraph, using the human voice instead of Morse signals. But what happened was that people developed that the telephone was a marvelous instrument for social communication, which resulted in overcharging the network. The further development of the telephone, from the telephone to the smartphone of today, truly revolutionized our way of communicating with one another. But it also changed our norms and values with regard to communication and social relations. And it has led to the almost complete disappearance of the letter and the art of written correspondence. Another example is taken from medicine, the technique of prenatal diagnostics. Indeed, the suggestion is that we can either use or not use prenatal diagnosis. But this choice heavily aggravates the responsibility of future parents. Can they morally permit themselves not to use this technology when this allows for the opportunity to prevent the birth of a severely handicapped child? So on the basis of these examples, my thesis is that we have to come to a more realistic conception of technology that says that technology indeed not only changes reality, but also changes ourselves, our values, and our norms. Hence, technology is not morally neutral. And technology creates normative uncertainty when it crosses certain boundaries. For instance, the boundary of the human body in prenatal diagnosis and the boundary of human behavior, as can be exemplified by the debate on assistive technology and surveillance technology. This normative uncertainty signals for us a need for dialogue and reflection because technological innovation challenges our long-held standards, norms and values, and in its development can only partly be controlled, as we have seen with the development of the telephone. So this calls for an alternative approach of the relation between ethics and technology. And this need for another relation is most clearly demonstrated by the most recent, almost silent revolution of ambient intelligence, the technology of smart homes. Already in 1991, Weiser wrote, "The most profound technologies are those that disappear, that weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it." And indeed, this third generation technology is neither active nor passive, but interactive. It is almost invisible and unobservable, and it establishes a network connection with people. And this results in the question, who here is the user of this technology? And is the notion of a user still adequate to typify the relation between humans and technology? If we answer this question negatively, then what are the consequences for the concept of free choice and informed consent? Is that doctrine still valid with regard to third generation technology? I would say, of course, yes. We can't do without informed consent. But informed consent will be extremely difficult for people with cognitive impairment to give, and they will need all the support they can get. Also, how can they object against an invisible and unobservable active technology? But another question is, and that is also very intriguing to my opinion, is what can we learn from this situation in which we place people with dementia for our own human condition? I think this is what we can learn. We are dependent on our technology, but our technology is hardly dependent on our consent. So finally, this is not to say that we cannot influence the development of technology, but the situation does call for an other and earlier involvement of ethics, and the question must not be, do we want technology, do we want this type of technology, but how can we guide technological development in such a way that it contributes to our search for a good life for and with others in good caring relations. Thus, instead of thinking in negative and stigmatizing terms of time bombs and tsunamis, we should think in positive and inclusionary terms and redesign our society into a caring society with technology as a crucial element of care. I thank you for your attention.